Thank you very much, Andy. That's very kind of you to say. So I am going to get in my acknowledgements first. I'd like to thank my other co-authors on the chapter, Bernard Hyde and Dermot Burke. I'd like to thank the many other EPA colleagues who've contributed to it. I'd like to thank you, Andy, also the SOE team, and all of our many, many reviewers. I also just want to take hopefully 10 seconds just to thank the people within our own unit and other EPA colleagues who work day in, day out to gather all the air quality data that helps us to do the modelling, and together with the data and the modelling that enables us to have the content, or enables me to have the content on these slides behind me, without whom it really wouldn't be possible. So I'm going to quickly give an overview. I'm going to go through air quality and health. I'm going to talk about the standards in Ireland in relation to air quality, talk about monitoring and modelling, and so much has happened in the last number of years in that space, and particularly Life Emerald. I'm going to touch on emissions, going to look through some trends, what we can do about this, and then circle back around, and hopefully you will see where the key messages very much fit with all of that. So, okay, it's really all about health. Air quality, or rather poor air quality, is a major environmental health issue. And these two pictures really show what we're talking about here. Our two major pollutants of concern are fine particulate matter, PM2.5, very fine particles, dominant source is domestic solid fuel heating, and then we've nitrogen dioxide from traffic, where the dominant source is diesel-powered vehicles, trucks, vans, buses, cars, etc. Now, why does this matter? It matters again because of the impact on our health. And Aisling was showing this slide here, so that speeds me up a little bit maybe in my presentation. So yeah, the impacts on some of our more vulnerable citizens. And there's an ever-growing volume of information and evidence in relation to this, including in Ireland, which is really important, because when we've Irish-based research showing these impacts, the Irish public pay a lot more attention to it. So as Aisling noted, there's links to recent research showing the links to depression, the impacts on our younger citizens. There's also impacts on our older citizens. There's recent research showing the links to stroke. And also very recently, together with our HSE colleagues, linkages, once again, this work was done in the 80s and the 90s, but it's being done again, showing the linkages through to hospital admissions. From periods in time where you see the air quality index for health going to poor, very poor, hospital admissions rising. It's unsurprising, but it's good to have the actual numbers and the research to definitively show it. So this is an infographic from the Irish Heart Foundation. Again, fine particulate matter, its impacts, it's the heart systems. Now it's also the lung systems. There could be a similar one from the ASI that we could put up. It's the particles. They are very small. You can line 500 of them up along a single human hair. So unfortunately, they penetrate very deeply into our lungs, into our blood systems, into our heart systems. I'm not a medical professional. I know there are some of you out there in the audience who know a lot more about this than I do. But it's because they're so small, they cause so much damage. And again, that 1,600 number for total premature deaths in Ireland due to fine particulate matter in the majority. So because of all of this evidence, the World Health Organization revised their guidelines. So they set up new interim target values 1 through to 4, an ultimate air quality guideline level for the main impacting pollutants, and you can see they get lower and lower and lower as you go along that table. This has resulted in revision both in the Cleaner Air for Europe directive, and I'm going to get to that in a minute, and equally in our own national clean air strategy. So this is looking at the last full year for which we have monitoring, which is 2023, and you can see where we fall for the key pollutants of health concern versus the monitoring stations. IT3, interim target 3, lines up with the first goal of our national clean air strategy to be met by 2026. This next one here, 2030, interim target 4, lines up with the next goal along from the clean air strategy, and it also aligns with the first goal to be achieved under the new Clean Air for Europe directive. And then we're all the way along over here in 2040, which does seem like a long way away, but I'm sure it'll come along very quickly. And this is the ultimate air quality guideline value and where we would have fallen. So let's pick PM2.5. So 101 stations, 9 of them based on 2023 data wouldn't meet the value that we need to achieve by 2026. 26 of them won't meet the one by 2030, which will be there in both European legislation and in the Clean Air Strategy, and the majority of them, 80, won't meet the ultimate air quality guideline value. So, as we mentioned, the revision of the Clean Air for Europe directive, which got another further signature this week, so it's pretty much on the way now, folks. It just needs to get published in the relevant journal, and then there'll be a 2-year implementation, etc., etc. What does it mean for us? What does it mean for Europe? There's been a lot of work on this, and you've probably heard people like me talk about this for years. So, the limit values are going lower. As all the evidence we've just shown on previous slides, they have to go lower. So by 2030, they're going lower for all the major impacting pollutants. It's adding new pollutants that we have to monitor for. Ultrafines, black carbon, ammonia, and some of these are going to have to be monitored at new, or shall we say, reimagined super sites across Ireland. It's also changing the legal framework. So it's changing the way we have to communicate. Now, we've done a lot in Ireland. I'm going to get to that in further slides about how we communicate, but it's going to make it a statutory requirement across all of Europe to do some of the things we've been doing in recent years. It's also going to have new requirements for air quality plans and a real innovation, which are the air quality roadmaps. So a roadmap is an air quality plan you have to have in place in advance of knowing that you're going to breach one of the limit values that's coming along. So you can't just toddle along, as we said, it's 2030. Oh, it's 2030, we're not going to meet this, and oh, we're going to have to do something and we're in breach and you're going to have another plan, etc., etc. You need to preempt this effectively. And there is a review requirement in the new directive. So by 2030, a review will have to be carried out to see, does it need to be even tighter again? Is there newer scientific evidence that needs to be taken on board? So, monitoring and modelling, the evidence base effectively. We've been doing a lot, as noted, and again, I think throughout the morning, to expand the monitoring network. Prior to 2017, we had 29 monitoring stations, less than half of those were providing real-time data. We're now up to a total extent of scope and network of 115. All but 2 were providing real-time information with the nice coloured dots, which are nice and green on this one, but they're not always green, particularly in the winter time when we get those cold, still conditions. And you can see in the back of this, it's a nice promo for what we call the Nowcast. But what that is an hourly updated modelled map. This is all on airquality.ie. Please go and take a look if you haven't at some point in time. There's a wealth of information in there. When we talk about expanding networks, there's also been a lot of work done by my colleagues on the ecosystems monitoring network. This shows the network as it was in 21-22. This is a pulling together of some pre-existing elements and newly added elements, and this is only going to grow as well. On the modelling side of things, we've used the data from that expanded network with European co-funding to develop the Life Emerald project, which just finished at the end of September. However, we're only going to start reaping and are only reaping the full benefits of this for Ireland in all of the coming years. So it stands for, it's an acronym, as all of these things are, for emissions modelling, forecasting in Ireland. It's going to strengthen our air quality management. And we were the main leading body in it with the Aspen Society, the Department of the Environment, the HSE, UCC, our academic partner, and VITO, our technical partner. We had a long list of other linked stakeholders of other government departments, public bodies, health NGOs. And what did it deliver? So it delivered a 3-day forecast for Ireland, which will enable every citizen to make informed decisions on their activities for up to 3 days into the future. It also delivered an air quality annual historical maps, which are shown at both national and city level. Those were released as part of our most recent Air Quality in Ireland report. And as you saw on a slide a couple of slides back, which is this graphic here in the background of the station dots, it also provides the hourly updated air quality maps. So not only colouring in the dots where the monitoring stations are, but colouring in between those dots based on the information from the model, metadata, and the actual live data from the monitoring stations. It's all on airquality.ie. It really has positioned us very strongly for that new CAFE directive that just got signed off this week. We're in a really strong position, but more importantly, it's providing all this information out to the Irish public to enable them to make those informed decisions and indeed engage with other stakeholders to look for further positive changes to happen in relation to air quality. So, to briefly touch upon emissions, we have seen significant reductions in a large number of the pollutants in the NEC directive. And again, we're now talking emissions. We've been talking about ambient air concentrations. We've now switched just for this slide to emissions. So significant reductions, like up to 95% in sulfur dioxide. I think we all know that we have seen these sort of reductions, except when we come to ammonia, where we are not meeting our reduction obligation. We have an 11% increase. We know that the dominant source of ammonia is agriculture, 99+%. I've just got this one here as well for PM. Again, it's just further noting that the dominant source is domestic solid fuel heating. And when it comes to ammonia, in order to achieve the 2030 commitments that we have, we know that there's going to have to be really close attention paid to all of those measures that are outlined in order to achieve that. If there is slippage, there are going to be substantial difficulties in meeting that. So looking at some of the trends. So again, looking from 2010 to 2023, these are zone plots, I should say. Ireland is split up into 4 zones for the purposes of monitoring air quality. A is Dublin, B is Cork, C is large cities and towns other than Dublin and Cork, and D is the rest of the country. So this is an average. You can see, as we say, it's been reducing over time. We're below the EU annual limit value for PM2.5, but as zonal averages, we cannot meet that WHO guideline value. I know you saw this previously on the other table where it was talking about individual stations, but yeah, we're above it. And it's monitored at stations like this one here in Lucan on a sunny day. This is nitrogen dioxide. Again, we're reducing over time, but here is where we have to go for WHO. This is the EU guideline. You can see zone D is kind of really flatlining. It is consistently below, but for the other zones where we are at the moment, we are above the 10 micrograms per metre cubed. And it would be similar if we were showing individual station plots. What can we do? To pick just 2 from traffic, leaving that car at home for up to 1 day in a week will make a significant difference of that reduction of the overall concentration of nitrogen dioxide on our streets. And reducing idling. Just switch it off, particularly if you're outside of school. It makes absolutely no sense to sit there in either your car or, by the way, if you're looking at your bus operator running their big diesel bus outside the school. I know it takes courage maybe, but ask them to switch it off. Why are they running their engine? I think we all know they sit there running their engines. This is having a health impact. That is nitrogen dioxide coming out, undiluted, straight into the air, right close to where your kids are. Avoiding using solid fuels in the solid fuel context. And energy efficiency. The most efficient fuel and equally the best fuel from an air quality perspective is the fuel you don't have to burn at all. We have an infographic linking through to solid fuels on how you heat your home, the best choices, the worst choices. To show the, worst choices, best choices. Thank you, Andy. Essentially, this is on version 6, which again is showing the fact we have to keep revising this. Change is happening. And change can happen. We've seen that in that graph. We can reduce our concentrations, but we have ever tighter targets to achieve. So equally, this makes our communication with the public easier at times. And coming back around then to those key messages. So again, air pollution has reduced over recent decades. Actions we put in place have worked, but the understanding of the concentrations that we now have to achieve for health reasons is also changing. So the goal keeps moving. And the World Health Organization does indicate that there are no safe levels. We can't meet those World Health Organization guidelines, as we saw from these slides, for our main pollutants, but the actions we can all take can improve quite rapidly our local air quality, as we saw as an unintended experiment during the COVID lockdown. When traffic volumes got cut, the level of NO2 in our streets plummeted. Unfortunately, when the traffic came back, NO2 went back up again. Achieving our ambitions in the clean air strategy and now our requirements under the new CAFE directive is going to be very positive for our health. But it is also going to be very, very challenging, and the EPA is calling for a clear roadmap of actions to deliver on that overall ambition. And when it comes to ammonia, yeah, we're currently non-compliant, and we will remain so for a period of time. And then the next guideline coming along is in relation to 2030. And again, in order to meet that, we really are going to have to execute all of those measures that are in there. Thank you very much for your attention.